Soul Night Live number 43. Tonight, my guests are Steve Babb and Fred Schendel from Glass Hammer. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Fred is swapping computers since we got the new link, but
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a little scattered today. I've got a lot of stuff going on this weekend, and
he's got the link. So,
all right, that's good. Well, good to see you. How you been doing?
Okay,
you're looking healthy. You're
thank you.
Avoiding the big C like the rest of us. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
How have you been spending your days lately?
The studio's staying really busy after the lockdown. So we're producing, I don't know, maybe 3 albums right now for some local customers, and doing audiobooks and working on a new Glass Hammer project. Well, 2 actually. We started writing for a new album, and then there's a project. It should be, I think the title is going to be A Matter of Time Volume 1, and this is where we have dug back into our 90s catalog and picked an album's worth of songs, and we're re-recording them from the ground up. In some cases, rearranging some things and doing some different things with them. And that ought to be out, I mean, literally within a few weeks.
That's cool. And it's like tracks culled from different albums.
Yeah, like everything 90s. So something from Journey of the Dunedain, Paralandra, on to Evermore, and 1 track even from Live and Revived.
Okay, excellent. We'll keep an eye out for that, folks. Yeah. And where will be the best place to get that when the time comes?
So we're going to do something new with this. This isn't going to be like a big push out release where we autograph copies. So in fact, it's going to be digital only. And it'll first be available on our site, high res, 2496 files, WAV files, MP3s, whatever people.
Okay.
So we're going to try like that, just to strictly a digital release, and then do a big, a typical new studio album release, maybe hopefully in the spring, where we, obviously print copies.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Yeah. We'll keep an eye out for that, folks. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And kind of modern updating. So it's not going to be a carbon copy. It's going to be kind of fresh spin on these tunes.
Some of them have a fresh spin. Some of them are just better recorded. I mean,
I can imagine the early stuff was probably done on
things we would, and things we wanted to do a little different. We got a chance to do. And so, your buddy Reese Boyd plays on a couple of tracks.
Excellent. Yeah. Atlanta's own. All right, it looks like Fred is here, so let's get him in here, and we will get rolling. And thank you again for taking the time to drop by tonight.
You're absolutely welcome. Glad to do it. Appreciate the promotion and support.
Oh, yeah. Glad to. You guys have been doing quality work for a long time. And, and I don't mean to lump
be like our slogan, Glass Hammer doing quality work.
That's right. Well, you can put that on your business cards and have a little hammer on there and a nail.
Making high quality prog since 1993.
There you go. That sounds good.
Here he is. Is that him?
I think so. Well, unless it's an imposter.
Yeah. I'll know. No, that's
yeah, that's him.
Hey,
Fred.
Are we live? Apparently I'm Joe tonight. So
yeah, we just wrapped up. Thanks, Fred.
Okay,
cool. It looks like I didn't get the memo about the beard and stuff. I'll try next time.
This is my lazy COVID beard.
Okay, lazy COVID beard. That could be a song, man. You could be writing that on the acoustic right now.
I see him every day, and that's the first time I've noticed it.
It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it just did.
Mine would look like that if I let it grow out pretty much, or pretty darn close. That's one of the reasons. When I started doing this show, I had a goatee, and it was all gray. And it just seemed like the biggest thing on the screen was my chin.
I know the feeling.
It still is, actually.
Yeah, it helps with that. We actually have to talk about
bullfrog. I just need to find a good pond to go live in.
Double chin hider. My wife's asking me, like, are you going to do Santa Claus? You going to be Santa Claus? You're fat. Be Santa Claus.
It's like, I don't know. It's like, how well does it pay, and can we do it on Zoom so you don't have to have this little rugrat sit in your lap and give you COVID?
Santa Claus.
Remote control Santa Claus. Yeah, there you go. That's the way to do it.
Just my angle.
Well, it's good to see you. Good to see you both. It's been a while. I guess last time I saw you, Fred, it was when we did the prog night.
Yeah.
Got about 4 or 5 years ago now.
It's been a while.
Time flies. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was watching some of that not long ago, and I thought it all came together pretty well considering.
It was fun.
There was little preparation in advance. I thought it turned out great. We did another couple of those the following years, and then I was worn out. It was like, I just can't. Just the logistics of putting that whole thing together was
that's crazy.
And then we lost our theater. Like the theater that we did our shows at got sold, and it's been rebought now, and it's become a part of a chain of rock venues, and they specialize in tribute bands. That's all they book. So if you want to come down and hear the Kid Rock tribute band or Cheap Trick or you name it,
that's a big business.
It is. It's really the only cover band business you can do worth a damn these days. And I admit I've been in a few myself over the years. I'm in an ELO one right now, and it's called Strange Magic, which is their first well-known hit, I guess. And we have a page here on Facebook if anyone wants to check it out. We're actually firing that band back up and getting ready to start playing out again. We haven't done shit all year, but we're about ready. Some gigs are happening, and just seems like things are kind of opening up. It's just a matter of playing outdoors and playing someplace where, there's a nice breeze to kind of blow the germs away.
There you go.
It's about all I'm interested in. So, well, cool. So how have you been spending your days, Fred?
Working at the studio for the most part.
Yeah. Now, is this a studio where anybody could just come in and record a song if they wanted to?
Preferably with an appointment.
But you're open to having people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The phone number's in the book. You can book it and come in.
Tell us what it's called and where
it's called Sound Resources. Okay. Soundresources.net.
Okay.
And we opened the studio the same year the second album came out. It was sort of built around the idea that we were going to do Glass Hammer albums, but people started to show up, and we thought, why not? So it turned into a business, and we are now the longest running full-time recording studio in Chattanooga.
Wow. Okay.
We have people coming from all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, if it's your second album, that was 25 years ago, right?
Started in 95. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the same year. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, and earlier, I didn't mean to lump you all together with the 90s stuff.
Oh, I don't mind. No.
Well, here's my perception is that the world at large is only familiar with the stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
If they even know what prog is. Yeah. But those are the only bands that are really household names. And then everything else, it's just kind of like the renaissance of it. If you're a prog head, you're hip to it. But if you're Joe Blow, you haven't heard about anything that's happened since 1980. Called it
the third wave, and then beyond that, I'm not sure. What these the next couple of generations of prog were actually labeled. But I was always proud that. It started when it started. And
it's a pretty short list. Those 90s bands. You guys. Well, of course, Dream Theater is, of course, the biggest thing out of the decade. But they also had the 80s metal wave to ride in on.
Right.
And that is probably why. And then guys like Echo Lynn, that's another good example. They'll actually be on the show next weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Chris and Ray are going to drop by, and we're going to talk about that record that's almost done and all the old ones, too.
Oh, yeah. The 90s were magic, man. They really, really were.
Now, you guys have only just played like festivals, right? Was there ever a time when you just played at a club in Chattanooga or anything like that?
Yeah.
We do that, but only when we're getting ready for the festivals.
Oh, okay. So kind of like a warm-up kind of show.
Well, there's a big theater here that was kind of modeled after the Fox in Atlanta. It's smaller, of course, but it was the Tivoli. And we got to do a big show there we headlined, and and did a video or a DVD in 2006 or 7. And beyond that, we just played the local rock clubs. And the last time, I think we ended up with 300 or 400 people through the door. And really, it was just meant to be a rehearsal show. So we've got, I mean, I think people come from different places, but we had a bigger local following than we realized. So yeah, we may do another Chattanooga show.
Very cool. Very
But
cool.
and then we did a couple of clubs. I think in 2015, before we did Rozfest, we went up and did maybe 3 different shows in the Northeast. But yeah, typically it's been just festivals.
Well, that's a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty, because festivals are always pretty nice. And you guys aren't playing like these hippie jam festivals where it's a mobile stage in the middle of a field with a bunch of, you know, sweating your balls off all day. You're in these nice air conditioned venues, you know.
Yeah, we get the treatment now, I think, for the most part. It's all, the promoters for these things usually treat the bands like rock stars, and that's always fun. You know?
Yeah, well, just the prog scene in general, it's always kind of an indoor, air-conditioned kind of place.
Well, there was there was a long-running prog festival out in the field that we played, but it was a very nice field. I enjoyed that field.
Yeah, it's like, I shouldn't say what I said then, because I guess Prog Day is the best, you know, and totally legit.
Yeah.
But it's
we know what you meant.
Yeah, and I still think it's a little more orderly than your typical, you know, jammy kind of affair. You know?
Oh yeah.
You know, it isn't just a bunch of sweaty bodies all pressed up against the stage. You know, everybody has a tent and their
as far as
cooler. You know, it's very, very orderly. It's like there's room for all of us. Just spread out. You know, so tell me.
They're pretty good.
So, what was the first big festival you guys played, and what year was it?
96.
It was Prog-scape, right?
Yes, Prog-scape in Baltimore.
With oh my goodness, another great 90s band. Oh, Rain Fart. Who were they?
Well, the Porcupine Tree was there.
They were there. No, but you know, I'm gonna hate myself for.
Oh geez,
thinking who
I
it
just
is.
looked it up the other day.
The Flower Kings.
No, they only did a couple albums and they kind of went away. They were a Baltimore band and they were local.
Mm.
Oh, come on, Sean, you should know.
I'll probably recognize it once you say it.
I probably won't come up with it. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to Google it.
Well, if anybody in the chat room remembers, let us know here.
Oh, I'm going to be embarrassed and I hate myself for not.
It's just a quarter century ago.
Yeah, the 90s were a long time ago, man. It's kind of blurry for everybody.
Yeah, but it was about, I think it was at Towson University. Does that sound right? And
that does sound right.
I think there were about 500 people. It was a pretty big deal in its day.
And yeah, Porcupine Tree. And I remember thinking, boy, there's a shoegaze band.
Oh yes.
I wonder if that's going to go anywhere.
They changed a lot. You know, for me, I didn't get online until like 99, 98. And I'm not even sure if I used the word prog. You know, I don't even think I thought about stuff that way. I just, you know, I loved Yes and King Crimson and kind of jazz. And stumbled onto the internet because, you know, I'd been online a few times in the mid-90s. I had a roommate that worked at a computer store, and occasionally he'd show me Yes's website or whatever. He's like, gosh, this is really nice. They must have really paid somebody some money for this. And so occasionally I'd kind of check out their tour dates and reviews on there, but I never really got online until 99. And then, you know, shortly after that, Progressive Ears erupted, and I wasn't really planned at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that just was, you know, I got tired of going to different places to talk about different bands and figured, well, let's just stick them all in one spot. And apparently,
you did a good thing, man.
Well, thank you. You know, I'd like to think so too. You know, 20 years on, I'm amazed it's still kicking. You know,
I look at it like, you know, there's the bands, there's you guys, there's a handful of magazines, you know, it's a big community of, and let's face it, even the bands, we're all prog rock fans. That's what we're, and so that all kind of blossomed in the 90s, right?
And then
really good, a cool way that kept it kind of safe from the outside world in a way. I mean, I think Ekelin, you'll talk to those guys about it. I mean, they had their day with Sony, I think, for a few minutes, and then they came back with the rest of us, and it's just, I think it's better, that way. I think.
Yeah, and I think, would you agree that the 2000s really felt like somebody turned the heat up and the internet kind of made it blossom and this resurgence got even bigger?
We were mostly, I mean, I have to say, I mean, there was a time where, I mean, Fred may have a different opinion, but I was always hyper focused on this band. What's this band doing? But I know things like Nearfest just, blew up, and that was a big deal.
It was, and it was
Untitled was a big deal, and so yeah, I think there was a kind of I think the renaissance of the '90s kind of took form, maybe a better form in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I'd say the 2000 through
legit, maybe.
Yeah, that whole decade, that just, I don't know, that was just kind of the time that I was really plugged in, and Progressive Years was kind of leading the way, but it was one of the factors that helped everybody gather together and share information, and some great bands came out of that too, or ones that just kind of started and sowed their seeds there, and we talked about them so much that they kind of blew up. So kind of nice. I could think of a number of them. But yeah, that was totally unexpected. It just kind of, I don't know, it seems like some of the coolest things in my life just kind of find me, kind of like this show. I didn't plan to do this, but I got pretty bored on Saturday nights, and it was like, well, this Zoom thing, everybody's doing it. Might as well try it, and so here we are. And it's kind of nice because, after being at a place like Progressive Years where we sit around and kind of speculate about what everybody is doing and their motivations behind it, I can just cut to the chase and ask people.
Just ask.
Yeah. And that feels really good, to just kind of cut out, the wondering and straight up. And a lot of these people, I've read hundreds of interviews with most everybody that we're fans of. So I've heard all the questions that we've all friggin' heard. So I'm kind of determined to dig up some nuggets that I haven't heard.
Yeah.
And if I haven't heard it, then I know y'all hadn't either, probably. So
there you go. Yeah.
It's been pretty fun. And, it's kind of hard to, every month it's like, oh shit, I got to scramble and find another month's worth of guests. Who's it going to be? And I don't know. Some folks, it's mostly through Facebook, but like some folks just read it and don't even reply. Like there's certain people on my wish list that I really want to have on, and they, I guess.
The heck with those people.
I don't know. Maybe some people will only bother to do this if it's Rolling Stone calling them or something. I don't know. But considering this is a kind of a niche, I think every time you have a chance to sit and talk about your music is a good thing.
I think we have to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have fans that we're real tight with. We have people like you we're real tight with, and we've always tried to be, the approachable guys, which probably got us in trouble a time or two. But yeah.
So that was the first festival, and then did you kind of get in the groove there and start doing them every year, pretty much?
We did lots of. Let's see. Next, we had a side project that kind of happened. Called Wizards. Went back to Baltimore and did that with
was that Wizards with a W?
Yeah.
Wizards.
Okay,
Wizard,
not with an L.
Yeah, Ken Golden put that album out.
Okay.
And then we also had an electronic music project and did a big show with that, which nobody knows about really.
Yeah, so we played at DragonCon a couple times in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Right, yeah.
I was talking to Nick DiVirgilio, and he mentioned that they played there one time.
Yeah, I think they played a year after we played.
But you know what? People were pissed off because there was no Mr. Spock there.
They rode our bandwagon into that gig.
They did. I think we bowed out and they filled in.
Yeah.
Then decided maybe it's not really such a prog venue down there after all. They're really kind of more into, whips and chains and.
Yeah, and
bondage and
big power chords. There's a metal prog power that's here every year that's huge.
Well, so that was the name of the one. It was. I think it was called that. But
that sounds about right.
That might have been it.
First year they did it, and then I remember they moved it to Atlanta the next year. So yeah, that happened. And then what did we do next? I guess it was it was Nearfest would be the the next really big.
Yeah. Okay, I remember that.
Because we took a hiatus. We did Prog Day in '97, and then we determined, I think because of the heat really got to us, that we just weren't going to play live anymore ever again. And for 5 years, we did not play live.
Yeah, we decided to pull Beatles. We're going to worry about recording how we want to record, and doing it live is not going to be a factor.
Yeah. So
which led directly to doing Lex Rex and thinking we'll never have to play this. And then we got a call from Nearfest and it was, oh crap, I guess.
Yeah, and we
got to figure this out.
Play that out.
Now, were you pretty familiar with them already? Had you been to any of them?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were walking into a wonderful gig at a beautiful fine arts center.
Well, I had said on an interview with somebody, it went out in a magazine. I said, we're not going to play live again unless Nearfest asks us. And they read it, one of those guys, and called us, I guess, right after that.
Well, that's really cool.
The big thing was if you got to play stuff, you got to play Lex Rex. And like Fred said, it was designed not to play.
So that made it all the harder. I remember you had a choir on it, among other things.
Yeah.
That was very ambitious.
We had to find a drummer.
What's that?
We had to find a drummer to go.
Yeah, that whole band developed around that show.
Oh, really? Who was in the band? I'm trying to remember. Was Walter in that on guitar?
Walter was in there.
I thought so. Walter. Okay, and who else? Who was on drums?
That's the first appearance where Susie joined us, and her sister Bethany, and the girl, another friend of theirs, Flo Paris. They all sang with us. Matt Mindians was the drummer.
Yeah, on the albums up to the point, the drums had all been me and Walter.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, was he more of a guitar player or more of a drummer, or kind of equally adept?
It depends on if you ask him or not. I always thought he was more of a drummer, honestly. He's a really good guitar player. He always enjoyed playing guitar more, obviously, because he got to be out front. Yeah, actually, honestly, I think he's probably a better bass player than the other two together. He's an excellent bass player.
Really good singer.
And a great singer.
Yeah, he just came down, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he's done some stuff on this '90s album.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Nearfest was always known as kind of a diverse festival where you get 10 bands over the weekend, and they are from all over the map and all over the globe. And I think that was kind of the beautiful part of it. The morning you guys play has kind of become kind of an infamous thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was not done on accident. We're pretty sure, that was highly intentional to have that contrast.
Yeah, in case people don't remember, there's a group called Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, which is their stage show is sort of like a goth circus that's come to town, meets zombies.
Yeah.
And maybe some people with animal heads on and other things. And, if you're not expecting it, it's a bit of a surprising show. Especially at 10:30 in the morning.
It surprised me. I mean, I knew what they sounded like, but I did not know what they looked like. We're like,
it had very dark in tone and music.
Yeah, I mean, a great band, just an absolutely phenomenally great band.
So to have
really love
like the darkness and then the light comes shining again when you guys.
That's what they said.
So anyhow,
they paid for an interesting ticket. I thought I really did.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was great. I don't know whether anybody's ever officially asked what we thought about it. We thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had been we had that one time at Dragon Con, and I don't really want to go into details, Fred. There was a group of band that went on. I don't know that it was a band, but they went on after us, and it was way weirder than Sleepy Time Gorilla.
Oh, really? I'm sure at Dragon Con, anything goes. It's probably S&M show.
There were flames and there were caskets. That's all I remember.
And raw eggs.
Yeah, let's don't. Yeah.
Let's go into the eggs. Okay.
Yeah, so it was no big deal for us.
But if anybody was kind of thinking, oh, man, I bet they did this to mess with Glass Hammer. It's like, no.
No, doesn't mess
like that.
No, I don't know. I didn't really think it was anything planned in advance. I just figured that's kind of how the lineup shook out when it came to
it probably was, but I'm sure that still at the same time there was some like, oh, yeah, this, you know.
That was done. I can promise you that was done.
Serendipitous kind of thing.
Yeah. So what are some of the coolest double bills you guys have done? Like, or even on festival bills where it's like, oh, I can't believe we're playing with them.
Well, I think that one for me was a big one because Camel was there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was geeking out. That was a very important group to me. So,
me too. Yeah, it was like every year I was like, Rob, you got to get Camel, and then he did.
Our sound engineer back then, he was a big Camel fan, and he'd introduced them to me in the early '80s. So we had really listened to a lot of that together, and the next thing I know, we're hanging out backstage talking. I guess it's Andy Latimer.
Yeah.
Actually walked him on stage. He was kind of a Spinal Tap thing. He couldn't really find his way back. He had his guitar on, and it's time for him to go on. And we talked all the way till he walked on stage. It was a blast.
I had a kind of an opposite experience. So when I was on the crew, one of the last years, we had Graaf Generator. And
cool.
Peter Hamill had already played there the previous year as a solo artist. So when I tried to lead him off the stage, he kind of just brushed me off and pushed me out of the way and tore through the door, So I was still trying to kind of guess which door was the right one to go out, and he's like, out of my way. I've been here before. You haven't, at least not up here on the stage. So,
but, Cruise to the Edge is always cool.
I wanted to ask about that. It's interesting how these festivals have kind of all wound up on boats. And just, did that take any getting used to? I mean, are things sliding around as the sea is?
The first year for us, which was the first year for Cruise to the Edge, was pretty rough. It was still fun.
Yeah, but there was a lot of seasickness and kind of getting used to things. When we were actually playing, I don't remember being that bad. I do remember, a band that likes to have their steel guitar on wheels on a little track.
Right.
Kind of.
It's like, yes, I know the one you're talking about. Yes, that's right. It's like, put some brakes on this thing for me.
We had one real rough night at sea, and then the seasickness kind of lingered.
It seems like, I don't know, when I watch footage, it seems like more than half the time the skies are overcast when they have these things. Is it?
There's just nothing you can do about that. I know, I've heard, I think it was the last one that we skipped one, I guess 2019. And the fog was so bad that the ship didn't leave till way, way late. And I mean, they go to great lengths to make those schedules. So it's a nightmare when you suddenly have to shift all these bands around. Now, communication, I think, is the worst part on the ship. You can't, if I need to locate Aaron, our drummer, there's no cell signal, so I can't find him. If Fred and I need to talk to somebody real quick and change something, you're just walking around the ship the whole day.
Looking for people.
Yeah,
it's like ye olde days.
Yes, yeah.
Your mom would sit on the porch and yell for you.
Yeah,
we signed up to do it again.
If you're on the bill, do they put you up for free?
We can't discuss those details.
Well,
they take great care of us. Yeah,
it's a good gig.
It's a very, very good.
It's a very good gig.
It's the best gig.
So it's your favorite out of all these?
Well, it's
in many ways, and certainly just being in a situation like that and being able to see so many bands in a nice setting, it is. I mean, I can't say that it was better than playing Nearfest though. I mean, Nearfest was
apples and
oranges. Walking in a big theater, I think there's always something magical about that. Especially, I mean, geez, it was slightly over 2,000 people, and I had seen that audience at Nearfest. I mean, I'd been in the venue, but there was nothing like that. And I've played for bigger audiences in other bands, but when the curtains went up, and there were curtains, and when those curtains went up, and there's those people, it took my breath away. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I mean, that's the audience we wanted to get in front of, and it was all about to happen. It was, it did take my breath away.
Yeah, but Cruise to the Edge is pretty fabulous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it does look like fun. I'm gonna have to check one out sometime. I've never even.
No, you'd need to do that at least once. I think
that would be fun. Yeah. As long as I don't know, cruises. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it's like I don't know.
It's not even so much about the cruise. That to me, it's not. It's just that there's all those bands and everybody's mingling. I mean, there's no way around it. You're all going to eat in the same.
That's true. Probably more so than something on land. where people are going to go to different hotels, and it's like everybody's
no,
kind of
you're right there, man. You're
like
going to have
this little
breakfast
microcosm of Prague all weekend.
I think it's a great idea.
The beauty of the cruise for me is basically that you're 50, 100 miles from land. There's no phones. You cannot be messed with. You just cannot. You don't have to worry about things. Whatever is happening back home, they can't hassle you with it.
Right.
Just relax.
And that's
play
unusual in this
play
day
your
and
music.
age.
Yeah.
In this day and age,
It's a beautiful thing.
Constantly connected. That's kind of nice to just get away from it. That's a very old school approach.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, how did you guys meet, and when was it?
Late 80s, I guess, early 90s.
Dude, no, you don't remember? I'm sad.
I remember the music store.
Day of the year.
How long ago was it?
Oh, 86.
86? Okay.
86.
I guess that would be right, actually. That's when I moved here.
Yeah, 86. Yeah.
Good grief.
he was working full-time at a music store, and I had just come in off the road and needed part-time work, and so I'm in there, and we had a mutual friend who had been he'd been telling me about Fred. They had met, I guess, the year before, and when I was on the road, he would tell me about this keyboard player. He's like, man, you've got to meet this guy. He's all this stuff, And then Fred walked up to me with a cassette, I think, at the Sound Post, just down the road here between where he and I live now. And he's like, hey, you want to check out my stuff? And he had my cassette, and I had his cassette.
It was because Steve had a cassette that he had done of synth music. It was almost new age, but not quite. But, it's like somebody else that does synth stuff. This is really cool.
And I'm like, somebody else that likes prog.
Yeah, and not, 80s type synth stuff, but, something that kind of harkened back more to the 70s. Like, we could get together and do synth things together.
Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't know if we were going to do new age music. I mean, that was still all the thing in the 80s, but we knew what we wanted to do. And we plotted for years. I mean, we stayed in touch. I went back on the road, but the bands that we were in, or me and I guess I stayed friends with that band that was Fred was in. And we just all stayed in touch until the early 90s when we could actually get together and do something. So I was a Fred Schendel fan the second I heard him play.
Well, very cool. So you guys just hit it off once you started chatting at the music store about your record collection.
Exactly.
Stuff, huh?
And of course, it turned out Steve's main thing was really bass more than keyboards. And like, well, if we play bass and we get a drummer, then we can have a real band.
Yeah.
So
he knew a drummer.
So was that the first Glass Hammer, or was that something called?
Well, no, actually, I mean, I guess really the decision to have a drummer came later. We started working on stuff that became that first album, and it was just going to be him and I. One thing we knew was no guitars. Yeah. Like, sorry, we're done with those guys, temporarily at least.
I don't blame you.
Coming in and doing their guitar thing. Obviously, we got over it. We got back to it.
Sure.
And drum-wise, at the time, we were just into the notion that, hey, listen to these, the great drum sounds of the Elisa Steve 4.
Yep.
We'll just program it, and no one will ever know. Except they all.
There's another one back there called Dr. You remember Dr. Rhythm?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I had a friend that would do just album after album where he'd punch everything in. And it was amazing because it's like because he wouldn't just loop sections. He would, from beginning to end, every beat was separate. And
I mean, that's the way I've always done it too. We had an early version of Cakewalk. This is still back in the days of DOS. No Windows. Cakewalk 3.1 running on a
compact
early Windows 3.1 machine probably, and that was our sequencer for doing the drums.
Did you guys have like the cassette recording Tascam and all that other before computers?
We did, and in fact, there's still one out in the studio. I think was laying around, but I had just got married in 1990, and my wife chipped in and got us a Tascam 8-channel reel-to-reel.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, this is great! Tape is moving, and then
that was pretty awesome.
And did the whole album in my apartment.
We thought of it in terms of we're going to record demos and really have our crap together before we go to the big studio and do this for real.
Sure.
And the more we kind of listened to what we were doing, we figured, well, this honestly, it sounds fine. And the trade-off for whatever sound quality will be that we'll have unlimited time to work on and polish it until we get what we want out of it.
Yeah, we took months.
Yeah, so we decided to hang on to the 8-track and just do it in the living room, and that's pretty much where that.
And in our day, I mean, he and I both had studio experience before that, but it sounded better than anything we could have done in Chattanooga at the time. Just doing it themselves.
Well, you know, just those home recording machines were kind of a revolution, you know.
Yeah.
Before that, you had to book studio time. There wasn't any doing it at home.
Right.
You know?
I had one in the tape that he heard of me in the 80s. I had one of those, our light tech, when we were on the road, and I think it was in Florida. He had one of those task cams, and I sat in the room in the motel and played a keyboard and recorded 4-track recordings, and then we took it to a studio and did a cassette release. You know, but it was all done on 16-track, and got a whole day in the studio and cranked out an album.
Yeah, and interestingly, the analog 8-track only lasted that first album. Yeah. And after that, we decided we were going to go ahead and try to open up a commercial studio, and we got 2 ADATs, so we were 16-track digital.
And 24 pretty quick after that.
Yeah, and 24 came real soon after. So we were up to, you know, being a 24-track studio fairly quickly. We had a gigantic analog hill console.
Yeah, certainly by the second album, that was done as 3 ADATs.
Yeah, and then eventually that morphed into a smaller Behringer console, and you know, then digital workstations took over in the early 2000s. All
right, no looking back.
No looking back.
Nope.
And now anybody can record at home, and there's a lot
and they all do
out there that proves it. So tell us about how you got into prog. Steve, what was your first flirtation with prog, and what band did you fall in love with?
You know, beyond what I'd heard on the radio, my introduction was through my fascination with Lord of the Rings. So I loved Tolkien, and I was 16 or so, I guess, and went into a record store and flipped through the racks and saw a band called Rush, and the album was Fly By Night, and there was a song called Rivendell. I'm like,
yeah,
Lord of the Rings.
Until touching Rivendell.
And I bought it, and then I had some friends that told me, hey, if you're into this, you need this. And they turned me on to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes. And maybe a couple other bands, but mostly those two. That became, you know, that was it for me, especially with Rush. I was a Rush fanatic, which led naturally, I think, to Yes as well. But yeah, I used to sit and play bass to Rush records all day.
Oh yeah, what was your favorite one back then?
Oh, well, geez. I mean, I got to see him perform Farewell to Kings live, and I had that album.
You ain't that old, are you?
Yes, I'm that old. I'll be 60 next week.
I'll be damned. Well, you look good.
Thank you. And then Hemispheres, I saw that show.
Oh God, that's the one
we all became
to see.
My all-time favorite.
Was that as awesome live as it was on record?
Absolutely. Yeah, to see them live was just, you know, when you're 17, 18 years old, it's just, you know, it's just everything.
And they hadn't written anything so yet. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like for some younger guys in the 90s and stuff, you're kind of sitting there going, okay, this new album's pretty good, but I'm waiting for that last half hour when they play the oldies, you know. Yeah. But back in your day, there wasn't.
Yeah, it was all the new stuff was the stuff.
And they were nerdy, you know. Like all your friends didn't know about this band, you know. Not everybody knew about this band, you know. But I had one good friend in high school, and he and I knew about it, you know. And it was Rush all day long. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I really paid any attention to them until Moving Pictures came out. I was in 8th grade.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
And, you know, that was kind of the bandwagon, I suppose. And then I got Signals for Christmas the next year, I guess, and kind of never looked back. Although I think it took me a while to listen to the whole record. I think I just kept playing New World Man over and over.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, a couple of years later when I started getting into metal and all this other stuff, I put them all on tapes, and I had a box of cassette tapes with 90-minute tapes with a different album on each side, you know, 2 records on each tape. And I carried this box of tapes around in this little boom box to everywhere I went. And Yeah, that's when I really got into having the patience to sit through a whole record, just put it on while you're doing something else. So how about you, Fred? When was your first flirtation?
Well, grew up listening to classical music. My parents were huge classical fans. And when I was a kid, it was the Beatles. And I was heavily into the Beatles and started getting into them right when Magical Mystery Tour. Well, actually, no, it would have been out for a while. I was probably 6 when I first started, but it was that psychedelic kind of era that I first started listening to them. I was a huge Beatles fan and didn't listen to a whole lot else in terms of pop music. And my older sister, at some point, I guess in '73, her and her boyfriend brought home a copy of A Passion Play, and I was supposed to be in bed.
Jethro Tull.
Yeah, and they listened to it downstairs. And I remember going to the top of the stairs and like listened to the whole thing all the way through, and it just absolutely blew my mind. It's like, what the heck was that? So I went out and got my own copy a couple months later, and then from then on out, it was Jethro Tull, pretty much 24/7 for the next couple of years. And then it was ELP, and that was kind of the band that made me realize that organ is the instrument, the Hammond is what you need to have, and you can front a band with it if you need to. And that was pretty much it. And then yes, I mean those were the gateway bands. But it was really Tull was the first real like big five prog band.
For me, that was the one I heard before any of them that I actually remember hearing. I remember in 1973, we went to LA to visit my aunt, and her niece lived with her. Beautiful, typical teenage, blonde-haired California girl. And she had a collection of 8-track tapes. And I just sit around punching these tapes in there with headphones on. And I put in one, and this guy's singing about snot running down his nose. And the kid doesn't like a song about snot,
Absolutely.
So that was probably new. I mean, that came out in '73. So it's probably just, she's in the Columbia Record Club, and it came in the mail that month. And I just immediately was like, yeah, there's something here, that I always kind of connected with rock records, even at a young age. Like my older brother left behind a bunch of records when he went to college. And my favorite one was Tommy from The Who.
Okay.
And even to this day, it's still a favorite. I've had the pleasure of actually performing the whole album a few times, and it's a treat. It's a rather esoteric album, though. It's like you wouldn't make a tribute band out of it. You'd have to play the obvious stuff, too.
Right. It was interesting is my gateway into Tommy was the movie and the soundtrack album.
Okay.
That was huge. And it was actually a while after that before I ever kind of worked my way back to the Who's album, and it was like, well, sounds completely different. It's almost, dare I say, kind of wimpy, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean,
in some ways, until you really start paying attention to it, and then realize, how much sound they were making for 3 guys, and what Pete was doing, and what I vastly prefer the original now, even though there were a couple cool cuts on the.
It has a kind of laid back, sleepy quality to it, even when it's rocking out, maybe it's just the engineering and the production. I didn't hear, I remember, of course, since I got a hold of that when I was 3, I heard it first, and then the movie came out, and I don't think I was old enough to go see it. So I don't think I saw it until it came on HBO in like the late '70s.
Yeah, I didn't see it for a long time either. I would have been horrified, probably.
Kind of silly. I still do. But
yeah, it's pretty goofy.
It's got its moments, and the way they approach the music. Keith Moon didn't even play on half of that soundtrack. It's like cats, and there's lots of synthesizer. It's almost like let's take the Tommy tunes and give them the Quadrophenia treatment.
Yeah, it's amazing how much synth is on that album. I didn't notice until later years, and I guess that's because Pete really felt like he was kind of doing it himself. He didn't have the band around, and that was what he was into at the time, is a new sound. Was the synth and the keyboards, and it worked better on Quadrophenia.
I agree. Well, it just seemed a little weird although some versions of on that soundtrack album are really bitchin'.
Elton John kicked butt on that. I really liked
the Acid Queen, that was bump, really funky kind of version. It's like when we were learning it, my drummer kept he had the soundtrack and the rest of us had the original. So he kept
that's not going to work.
The other version. And it's like, no, that's not how this goes, you know? So that was weird. Okay, cool. So tell everybody about the most recent album. I had the pleasure of hearing it a while back. Local talent Reese Boyd is on there playing.
Yes, he is. And he's been on a couple albums now.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, tell the folks about, you know, what it's called and the premise and all.
Dreaming City is the name of our last album. I think that we went into it knowing we wanted to maybe kind of touch on some of our other influences like Rush. There were some electronic things we'd been experimenting with, so we decided that was going to be a part of it. But we also, I mean, I try to come up with these, you know, interesting or unique ideas for concept albums, and this was going to be an attempt to kind of capture the way I felt when I was 17 or 18 and I first discovered Elric books, Sword and Sorcery, John Carter of Mars, that kind of sword fighter, you know, anti-heroes was a big thing. So I wanted to try to give it the look and the feel of an old paperback, as if some undiscovered old paperback had been found from the 60s and a prog band from the 70s got a hold of it and did a concept album. I guess that's kind of what it is. Is that meta? Is that, you know, I guess it is. And I think it really worked. It came out, you know, it was scheduled to come out right in the middle of what was going to be a lockdown, so that was horrifying. It was at the plant as things were shutting down. But the message behind the album really worked for us. It was, I think, hope. What did we say? It was hope in the midst of despair. That was the whole theme for the album. Of course,
that's the whole theme of Glass Hammer's entire career.
Yeah, kind of.
It's the theme of every album.
Oh, I know.
Definitely this one. Well,
yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of despair. So you need a lot of hope. Yeah, so I think a lot of people kind of embraced this one, and it did really well for us. And I think people like the sound of it. So I believe, Fred can back me up on this or tell me I'm crazy, but I believe this is a new chapter now. We have those every now and then.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd say the majority of your albums, each one of them has its own unique personality. You know, so.
I thank you for saying so. I completely agree. But I do feel like looking back over the whole 20 some odd years, there's kind of phases that we go through.
Sure. And
they develop, you know, over time. We like what we did enough that the idea now is to go on and do a part 2 to that album, and probably go on beyond that and do a part 3 and have a trilogy.
Sounds good. You need a hemispheres or something in there.
Yeah, well,
in the middle.
Yeah. We can.
Yeah, this would be like a Rush 3 album mark. They always used to say that they used to kind of. You can look back at their career and it's always 3 studio albums and a live album, and it's like an experimental album, getting it together album, and then like the final statement where it all comes together, and then a live album.
Usually,
they always thought, so we're going to see if we can do that maybe.
We have some plans that I think can facilitate that too. There's a lot going on with the concept of the album. It actually ties into one of our most popular ones, which was The Inconsolable Secret back in the early 2000s, which I think, you know, that was a really big album for us. The story was very important to me. So as a writer and a lyricist, it's excellent for me because it's something I'm really attached to. So pulling off a trilogy that's actually a throwback to some earlier stuff and just kind of tie up the whole Glass Hammer saga, I think it's just going to be fun.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the musical side, we really made a pretty conscious decision to have an album that was a little bit more of a old-fashioned rock, prog rock album.
Masculine, yeah.
Get away from, I mean, not that it wouldn't still be kind of a symphonic prog album, but turn to guitars a little bit more. And Rush was definitely at the forefront, I think, of our thinking. It's like, you know, what what if we could kind of do the follow-up album to Farewell to Kings that was different from what they actually did. And it didn't wind up being 100% that. There's certainly some of that on there. And the final song is really kind of the major, I guess, thing that kind of went that route. But, you know, there wound up being a lot of other different things on it. There's the couple little obligatory Gentle Giant nods, and there's
Tangerine
the
Dream.
synthwave stuff, which is kind of a new thing, you know, to kind of break the album up a little bit, so it's not just, you know, the same song after the same song. There's
I think it's a good balance.
There's little space metals, you know, Hawkwind kind of stuff on it. So yeah, we like it, and it's fun, and it's just fun to play, and that stuff is just absolutely fun to get out. And we're you know, we're always a little worried if we kind of go in that direction that people will worry that we're selling out and we're not prog anymore, and they're trying to rip off Porcupine Tree or something. So it's always kind of a tightrope to kind of keep the core audience happy and do something like that. And apparently it worked out this time, which is great.
How much prog do you guys listen to at home just for fun?
Very little.
Very little.
Me too.
I would like to keep up more, and sometimes I feel like I should, but I almost don't listen to music anymore. I mean, I just kind of being at the studio all day and, you know, listening to people's stuff all day long. Not that it's bad. I mean, I love it, but when I get home, I'm kind of not in the mood. So I tend to listen to books on tape in the car, and you know, I feel woefully unaware probably of a lot of good stuff that's probably out there right now, but that's
I hear you.
Well,
you know,
We listen to, you know, and especially when we're writing an album, I think, and you probably do this too, Fred. We listen to rough mixes just all day long.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how can we make this better. So there's really not any time to do anything else. I have noticed a trend for me where I'll pick 2 or 3 albums, some odd things, really, not necessarily prog at all, that I kind of use to set myself up in a writing mood. And lately it's been a lot of old Black Sabbath.
So, nice.
Yeah, and then if you can infuse prog into those sounds, then you've done something kind of interesting.
Yeah, and even they were trying to towards the end there. Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die.
The arrangements were kind of proggy, the early stuff. It was just some really weird intros, and then it would all change meter, and you know.
And then they swing. And then they swing. You know, that band, you know, really had to it.
Totally.
You know, it isn't all just doom-laden Godzilla stepping around stuff. It's, you know, they had a jazzy underpinning. Thanks to
you can put blue scales and pentatonic stuff into prog. Gentle Giant proved it. Jerry Green proved it.
Absolutely. So. I mean, I can't think of anybody more prog than Gentle Giant when you get down to it. But yet they didn't follow a lot of the typical roads that other bands did. There weren't any sidelong epics. And a great deal of their stuff is in 4/4, but the way they syncopated, it feels like it's
exactly.
Which just shows how brilliant they were, you know.
Yeah, Bill Bruford used to talk about that. He used to say that he had more fun taking 4/4 and making it sound weird than actually playing in a weird key signature in the first place. He got more of a kick out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been more on a old vinyl kick, you know. So I'd say a great deal of what I'm listening to is from the 70s or the 80s. But not really prog. It's like, you know, in the world of prog, there's about 100 albums that we talk about over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And after 15 years of listening to them, I'm just kind of over them, you know. I mean, they'll always mean something to me, but
I love them all to death. But I could play it in my head right now if I needed to. I don't need to actually put it on.
Right. I mean, everything in the Big Five catalog from all those bands, you know, every single one of them, even the ones that kind of make you go, "What are they doing?" You know, I don't know. I can't say I've memorized Love Beach yet, but
yeah, true. I will say that, and I haven't done this as much lately. I did get on a little kick where I was trying to do discographies of bands that I felt like I should have paid more attention to and didn't, like, say, Chicago. You know, I went through Chicago and at least up until, you know, the end of the Terry Kath era. And it's just, you know, absolutely amazing. It's like, how did it take me 40 years to finally listen to all this stuff? I heard the radio hits, and I knew that there was some good, deeper stuff, but to really sit down and check it out. Graaf Generator, is another one. It took me forever to warm up to that band. It took decades.
I'm still working on it, but
well, I tell you, God Bluff finally won me over.
That's
I
the
don't
one
know
I
why,
like.
but I got a hold of God Bluff and was just like, holy cow, I get it now.
That's kind of the second version of them, and
yeah.
I just think
And admittedly, the earlier albums are still spotty. I'm not actually a big a fan of Pawn Hearts as the rest of the world. I actually like He to He better.
Yeah.
Or H to He, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, God Bluff is the one that kind of got me. That tune "Scorched Earth" in particular, I think is really.
Yeah, that's good stuff. But I'm trying to find bands to kind of.
Well, it's fun to do that though. It's like I've been doing that for the past 10 years at least, where it's just like, all right, I never paid any attention to this band. Like Fleetwood Mac's a good example. Everybody's heard the two cocaine-infested albums that are at the top of the charts, Rumors.
Right, and there were two great versions of the band prior to that.
Yeah, they had 10 albums before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks came along, and that Bob Welch era is really cool stuff. I love it. And so that was one that was just like, I find it more fun to go explore some band's catalog that I never paid attention to. Like another one that I've been working on lately that finally clicked for me is Little Feat.
Oh yeah,
great stuff.
Okay. Just one of the best pianists in history.
Oh yeah, Bill Payne.
Bar none. The guy's sick. I mean, he's absolutely sick. It makes me disgusted what he can do.
Well, it's funny.
He doesn't get the same recognition as a Keith Emerson or anybody, but he's a ridiculous player.
Oh, he's got the chops, and that whole New Orleans kind of vibe that's mixed in there is just makes it all the more slippery in a way.
Yeah.
When you try to emulate that stuff, you realize that they don't play anything the same through the song. It's like constantly morphing, and my hat's off to them. So, and Chicago was another one. I loved their records when I was a little kid. My brother brought home the first couple of them, and I always loved bands with a horn section. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. That second album with Spinning Wheel on it, I loved as well.
Well, and then therefore, I mean, it shouldn't come as any surprise to anybody that suddenly horn sections popped up on Chronomenaut, and that was why. Is because I just listened to a crap load of Chicago, and it's like, why the heck not? Why can't we?
Oh, and it's such a great sound, and live it's very powerful. It's a lot of fun. I've never actually played any Chicago. There was a Chicago tribute band in town, but the guitar spot was already filled. So it's kind of like, God, I'd love to do that, but you don't need me.
Yeah.
And but I have played with a horn section a few times. We have a Steely Dan tribute that we do every couple times a year, and it's great to play those songs with all those horn arrangements and stuff. So. Yeah, I'd love to have I actually thought about doing a show with my band and adding a horn section this year, but, other plans erupted that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to do that sometime. I think it'd
be fun. I'd love to play in a horn band. I'd love to play in a big, funky horn band.
I hear you. I know.
Like Kool and the Gang, like early Kool and the Gang. I would love to do that and be the keyboard player in that band. To be
infectiously fun. But the Chicago stuff, I remember about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, it's like, I only know 1 and 2. I wonder what the heck the other numbers are like, and then I picked up
3's amazing, 7's amazing.
7 is my favorite in some ways.
Yeah.
6 is kind of a little disappointing, a little scattershot, and a little light. Like Just You and Me, that kind of points to the ballads they'd be doing in a few years.
Yeah, it's probably the throwaway, that original bunch of albums.
What I found with them is after a while, it's kind of like they shoot their wad on one amazing album, and then the next one would be just kind of okay. Almost like we just ain't got a whole lot of, rocket sauce left in the bottle at the moment.
Yeah, but I could accuse them maybe of making double albums when they should have made singles in a couple times, and there was filler.
Yeah, well,
why not? At least that gives you the option to listen to it or skip it.
But then, the one time they didn't, on number 5, that's one of their best ones. That's solid from beginning to end. So, then maybe there is something to be said for, trimming it back to one record.
Let's get Steve back in the conversation. What classic band should you go back and listen to their whole discography and discover?
Have you dug through the
Black Sabbath?
Oh, those were big in my teen years, man. Every one of those.
Yeah.
Actually, it took me a long time to get into Black Sabbath too as a kid. The first time I heard Ozzy, I was just like, nope, not for me. This
Well, that
band
was the
scares
thing
me.
with me. The one guy, and we're still friends, at least on Facebook, that this was probably 1979. He was throwing away his prog rock collection and a whole lot of stuff, and he was into punk rock, and he wasn't going to turn back. And so he just handed me all these albums, and in that collection were Close to the Edge, the Yes album, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I think Works, or Volume 2, I'm not sure. Tarkus, Trilogy, Paranoid, Sabotage, and so it's just this amalgamation of Black Sabbath, Doom, and Yes, Happiness, and it formed. That's all my wires got kind of hooked up right then. So I think it's reflected in what we do.
It's kind of funny in a way, not being able to get into certain bands early on kind of worked out for the best, because I'm able to still enjoy them now. The fact that it took me 20 or 30 years. Police is another great example. When the Police came out, I was just like, I don't get it. What's so great about that? Get this kind of high John Anderson, maybe wannabe singer guy, and the drummer's good, but the ska and the reggae, it's like, no, I'm not feeling it. And about, once again, I don't know whether it was 20 years later, those first couple albums, it's where I was, oh my goodness, that stuff's brilliant. That's just absolutely amazing. So now I can enjoy the Police. I'm still sick of Synchronicity, but those first 3 albums, I can really enjoy.
Oh yeah, I love all those.
I didn't at the time.
I think Ghost of the Machine is pretty underrated too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a really interesting album. I think there's a few throwaway tracks on side too, like the one where he sings in French. But yeah, a really interesting record. Yeah, I agree about that. It's like some of these bands I don't think I would have appreciated if you laid their catalog on me when I was a teenager. I think I found them at the right time, even if it took me decades to get there.
Yeah, and part of it was prog snobbery. I mean, I was heavily into, what I like to think of as, complicated, important music. And, even though I liked the Beatles and I liked funky music and I even liked some punk, so it wasn't all that, but there was kind of a weird threshold where I would just dismiss something because it sounded simplistic.
Sure.
Like the Cars.
Right.
Cars is another band, I warmed up to them faster, but I used to make merciless fun of Greg Hawkes. Like, what a goofball,
right.
Playing keyboards with one finger, and it's just like, he sucks. He can't play. And then suddenly one day it's like, maybe that's the only note he needed to play.
Speaking of one net finger, how about Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran?
Yeah, I still kind of make fun of him.
Real good and push one key. The sequencer fires up.
Yeah, I'm still at least willing. I'm at least have evolved enough. I'm willing to say that Nick Rhodes is a good programmer and had a good sense of.
Yeah, man, he was inspired by Kraftwerk and a bunch of stuff like that.
Hey, they had a good run.
Yeah, those songs will live longer than we will. So,
But I'm a legit fan of Greg Hawkes now. I think he's actually a great underrated player. He's not technical, but it's like Rick Wright. It's the same thing. He does the right thing for his band. So
yeah, were you guys into any of the fusion stuff? Maha.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Forever and all that.
Yeah, not heavily, but Bruford obviously, and I like that first Electric Return to Forever album. I remember being surprised when I found out that they'd been a band for however many years before Romantic Warrior, and Jean-Luc Ponty, obviously had a great band. But definitely the stuff that sounded rockier. But I always felt that there was a distinction between the bands that were rock guys trying to be jazzier and the jazz guys trying to be rockier. Like Bruford was a jazz guy, rock guy doing jazz, and Return to Forever were jazz guys doing rock. And I always thought the Bruford approach with the rock guys was better.
Yeah, well, his brand of fusion was really unique.
Yeah,
he came at it from a different angle than any of those bands did.
I love that. And Eddie Jobson, his somewhat jazziness. He wasn't obviously a big jazz player, but he had some jazz chords, and some jazz things that he did here and there.
Oh yeah. You know, I think progressive rock and fusion kind of go hand in hand. You know, there's a similar technical dexterity level that's there, and the tones and the textures are there's a lot of
Yeah,
overlap.
definitely. And I think possibly the difference is that the pure jazz guys, even when they went electric, they were still coming from the jazz perspective of we're going to have the head do a tune and then everybody's just going to go off and solo and blow. And it's still mostly improvised. And I think that I like the Bruford stuff because it did have more set, written, arranged stuff in it.
Yeah, it was thoroughly arranged. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
which I've always
Mahavishnu,
kind
a
of,
lot of Mahavishnus like that, where they have a really cool head and then they blow. You know, some of the things I like best about Mahavishnu is more about the chord progressions and those weird
yeah.
angular chords and weird arpeggios. And what when the soloing, yeah, I could take it or leave it. I've heard McLaughlin play better in other time periods.
Right. And I was a big fan of the first two Mahavishnu albums too, but they always sound a little out of tune to me. That's the thing that always killed me. It's
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they probably were.
tune up, dudes.
You know,
But
Birds of
it's great.
Fire,
It is
man.
great stuff. That's a great album.
Yeah.
Intermounting Flame was always my favorite.
Yeah. Well, Visions of the Emerald, I thought was really nice too. That's when
That's
he
a cool album. I
swapped
haven't
a
heard
lot
it in a long
about
time.
John Luke Ponty in there, and
Yeah.
I think the production values were a little better by then too. So it's a really good sounding record.
Yeah.
You know, we had a show a few months ago where I rounded up all the guys that have helped run Progressive Ears for the past 20 years. Lee and people we hadn't talked to in years. And we kind of stopped and talked about how progressive rock has evolved in the last 20 years or hasn't. And I was just curious, you guys' thoughts on that.
Oh my goodness, that's a
Or
good
if you
subject.
even been paying attention, you know, because I don't
Well,
know.
the thing is, I don't know, should we try to talk about the scene in general or just kind of from our perspective as a band? Because I think I've Steve can, correct me or not. I think definitely the way we've been looking at it recently is that, I think maybe lost the ambition in a way to try to outprog ourselves and everybody else in each album. It's like it can only go so far. And eventually you realize that for that level of complexity, the young guys really should just take it over. They've got the fire and they're good to go. So I think that's helped us kind of fall back more on, let's keep it proggy and interesting for us, but let's kind of get back to the rock and the songs and the melodies.
Yeah, I want to make
stuff that maybe we had trouble with a lot of times. A lot of stuff we've written through the years had great chord progressions and great arrangements, and the melody just kind of got slapped on it. So we're trying to think more along those terms, so we don't feel like we have to jump over a bar every time that we put an album out. And we don't feel like we have to redefine prog for the sake of redefining prog and fall into that category of, oh, they're doing something brand new and exciting that's never.
Yeah, we're not even trying to be a band when we do an album. I mean, as evidenced by the number of people that show up on our albums, we're just trying to make an interesting album.
Yeah, and Glass Hammer, I think, has never had a view of we're going to reinvent the wheel and give the world something brand new that's going to make them sit up and be amazed. It's always kind of been, we're just going to take the music that we like and do something in that vein. Hopefully, it's not a total pastiche or something, but you can always hear the influences, and we've never been shy or upset about that. It's like, how many bands are really delivering that sound now? It's going to be us.
Well, I think the conclusion we kind of came to was that, in the past 20 years, there have been some really interesting bands that have come along, but they're kind of hybrids of other things that came previously. There's nothing like, nobody's really reinventing the wheel because there's so much that's been done. It's almost like in order to reinvent the wheel, you almost have to move into some thorny territory, harmonically, rhythmically.
Yeah, and until, like, if somebody comes along and manages to successfully really blend European classical music and hip hop or something, then maybe you'll have something kind of new. And I've thought it would be fun to go out and grab rappers and say, look, have you ever tried to do this in 7/4? Because I know there's ones out there that could do it. We've met them. It's like, I know you could do it. But would anybody care, really?
And again, that's like another hybrid. It's like kind of hybrid
is
where you find your originality these days is by just making a jambalaya you know, with as many influences as possible in there. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I think,
just feel like, you know, harmonically, we've done about everything we can do. I mean, I don't think the world's dying for microtonal prog epics, you know, that isn't going to happen.
If there's a new shift in music, and it's actually kind of happening in some areas of pop music and even, oddly enough, praise and worship music, but music has become less about melody and rhythm, which are the two things that it was always about. Now it's more about timbre and texture. So it's really almost more like you get into just a repetitive groove, but then it's how the sounds are changing and shifting on top of that. I mean, I think that's probably subtly the newest change in music. And of course, on the other hand, there were people like Tangerine Dream and, you know, some synthwave bands, I guess was what we call them now, that had figured that out 40 years ago, where you just get a drone going and you sweep a filter and things, little magical bubbly sounds happen. But if, you know, that's that getting into pop music and the complete simplicity of pop music now, you know, is kind of a shift, because it's simple if you listen to what the melodic and harmonic content is, but it's not simple in terms of the way the sounds are interacting with each other. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So, but, you know, once again, that's for other people to figure out. We're doing what we do.
Yeah.
So I was curious about your thoughts on some of the later albums by some of the big five. Like, any thought, you have any favorite Yes albums that came after the 70s?
I mean, I enjoyed the 90s output. I really did.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good stuff there.
The Genesis, you know, I have a problem with any of it. I mean, the 80s were so musical, and we were in bands, you know, we were in cover bands, so you were playing all kinds of stuff and listening to all kinds of stuff. But so yes, and Genesis went pop for a little while. That's fine. And then some great stuff. We listened to that around here in our house still.
I like Open Your Eyes. I don't like all of it, but I think there's good music on Open Your Eyes. I think I like Fly From Here. No.
Past that,
neither one of them are my favorites. I wouldn't reach for them over the classic stuff, but I don't dislike them.
Beyond that, I haven't listened to. I don't even listen to the stuff probably past that any of these people have done past 1990. I don't have time, and I'm not interested in it anymore.
Well, I think it's been fun to check them out as they've come down the pike. You know, some of these bands, it's sort of like supporting your favorite sports team. It's like sometimes they have an off year, but it's you turn out to see what's going to happen anyway. And then in hindsight, you look back and go, well, maybe that wasn't the greatest thing they ever did, but I enjoyed it.
I try to find some there's new groups I listen to. I find on YouTube. Like there's a kind of a new wave of psychedelic music that came out. Probably been going on for 10 years, and it's probably, by the time I found it, it's probably over. But these are young guys in their 20s that dress the part of a psychedelic band, you know. And there was a band called, I think they're called Temples. That's the name, yeah. Super, super stuff. Really, really groovy stuff. And they get it, you know. But I just kind of like to discover some new stuff. But so I haven't been really faithful, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've got a bigger love for great pop music in the last 15 years than I have for anything progressive.
Yeah. And I'm still stuck on 80s pop.
Yeah, or 70s too. You know, even the silliest songs from the 70s are put together beautifully, and they have great tones. You know, it was like a time before a lot of cheesy tones came along, you know. So it's you can't go wrong with it, really. And then some later stuff. I got on a big Jellyfish kick about a year.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, you said that, because talking about well-crafted pop, and that's like the first thing that popped into my head was what a great band.
Oh yeah, and you know, the follow-up. You know, the 3 out of 4 of the guys have been doing this thing called the Licorice Quartet.
Right, and believe it or not, I hate it, but I really haven't had the time to sit down and even check that out. And it's like high on my list.
I know it's just 4 songs. It's an EP.
One of the things I probably love.
I think you'll like it. I mean,
Yeah.
it has jellyfish genes, but it's its own thing. But it's impeccably produced. The harmonies are amazing. There's no auto tune or any of that shit in there, and it's catchy. They have a epic on it called the Lighthouse Spaceship. That's kind of almost has a Beatles kind of "She's So Heavy" kind of ending, kind of psychedelic. I'm the
Cool.
Walrus, which is really nice. And they have a an ode to sneaking a quickie while the kids are away called Fadoodle.
Yeah.
Fadoodle with me. I'm asking nicely.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up because you've reminded me. That's been on my list. So yeah, I will
that's
find
great.
it and I will hear it.
I've actually had Roger Manning on the show a few times, and
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, it's like big fanboy, and to get a chance to chat with like one of my favorite artists of late was a real treat, and he's an awesome dude. So, and they have other stuff coming. What they decided to do is treat it like split an album up into 3 EPs. So instead of putting out an album and vanishing for 3 years, they can just kind of dole the EPs out every 8 months or so.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, there's more stuff coming that'll be quite different from the first one, from what I hear. But, similar caliber. Those guys make some great sounding records. Excellent. So, what was the first amazing concert you went to, Steve?
That would be, and that blew my head off. Well, I mean, I got to see, the first concert I saw was the Frampton Comes Alive tour.
Okay. Was that when he was opening for Yes on the Relayer tour? Or?
No, Billy Squire, I think, was opening for. No, I don't remember who opened for him.
Mm-hmm.
No, this was, he was headlining, so I'm in Birmingham. And I was a big fan. And then saw Kiss Alive 2, that tour, and just blew my head off. And I was a big Kiss fan. And then right after that's when I got to see Rush, Farewell to Kings. So I had 3 in a row, I think, that were, pretty impressive, and I knew what I wanted to do with my life.
What was your average ticket price back then that you paid?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Probably,
$5.
what, $7, maybe? Something like that.
That's amazing. I remember when I saw Pink Floyd in '87, I complained that I was paying $25. It was the most expensive concert I'd ever gone to up to that point. And in hindsight, that's nothing.
Yeah, I remember, I guess probably, it must have been about 81, but a guy that I was in a band with was going to take his girlfriend to see the Bee Gees. And that was like a big, big deal. And we're like, how much is it to go see the Bee Gees? And he said, $15. And we were like, $15 for a concert that you're going to hate? You're freaking crazy. But like 15 was the equivalent probably of saying $250 today.
Yeah.
That was just an outrageous amount to go see any kind of major band. So yeah, the average bands couldn't have been more than $8 or $9 to see it in an arena. It's hard to believe.
They were pretty cheap in the '80s. I remember when I saw the 90125 tour for like $14.
Yeah.
And then, I blame the Eagles. That Hell Freezes Over tour. That
was it.
Like $100 a head, and the whole industry just went, "Hey, if they can get away with this, let's do it too." And the next thing you know, that's just your entry level price almost for a lot of seats.
Yeah, that's honestly about the time that I started saying, you know what, I'll wait for the DVD.
Sure.
Because they all started doing that too. So.
Oh yeah, I'm a big collector. That's kind of come and gone too at this point. There's but for the past 20 years, I've collected a ton of them. Like everything in that cabinet over there is DVDs, and everything between me, I've got a bunch, and there's all music. I don't collect movies. There's no movie I want to see more than once or twice until I completely forget what happened, and that takes years.
There's an interesting question: is what would be the last band that you actually saw as a big arena concert?
Oh, that's easy. Well, I don't know, big arena concert. Well, last summer I saw Queen, or a year ago, and I saw ELO. So those were the 2 big arenas. But the last concert I saw, me and Reese and some friends of ours drove up to the Ryman and saw the Tubes.
Oh wow, okay.
February.
I remember that actually. I remember you guys going.
Yeah, that was a bucket.
I would have loved to have been there.
I mean, they'd never come to Atlanta, and suddenly it was just like, we're going. It's like, hey, you don't mind if I tag along with you? Little did I know it'd be the last concert I'd go to this year. So I'm gladder I went.
I kind of tend to think the last time I went to see a headlining band in an arena kind of setting was, it was Yes. It might have been the 45th anniversary show.
Oh, the one with the big inflatable
Yeah,
props and all that?
that honestly might be it.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. I didn't,
It was all right.
I was
We
more
saw
excited
Kiss,
a
Fred.
couple
Yep.
years
In
earlier.
the late 90s, we saw Kiss.
Well, yeah, but that was way before Yes.
No, that's like the big reunion tour. We saw Kiss.
Yeah, I know we saw Kiss, but like you said, that was in the 90s though. Yes was in the 2005 or whatever.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but I
Yeah,
do
I
remember going
think
to see Kiss reunion. That was cool.
Yeah, I think it was 2004. I think
Yeah.
when Wakeman came back in 2002, that was the pinnacle Yes show for me. That was just great. They played Revealing Science, which is one of my favorite epics that never gets played hardly. And they did America, and they did South Side of the Sky, and it was just the most ultimate Yes set list. And Rick was back, and then caught him a couple times during that era. And then by the time they came back with the inflatables, I was kind of like, eh.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. I went with Lee that ran Progressive Years. I'm just like, man, a couple of years ago, I just would have been melting, and now, I don't know. It's almost like the vibe they had on stage had deteriorated, and it kind of crept out into the audience, at least for me. Almost like, I don't know. Those
Yeah,
guys,
I get it. I know what
like
you're saying.
I think they're kind of happy to be back together in their perfect lineup, and then after a couple of years, they're kind of like, I'm stuck with these guys again. Lots
Yeah.
of soap operas that go with bands.
That's what we
Of
hear.
course, it wasn't a big arena show, but I was at that ARW show in Atlanta.
Yeah, you came up and we saw it together with
Yeah,
Reese.
that was a good show. It
That
was
was,
early in the tour. It had some kinks to work out, but all in all, but that was, they were really into it. Everybody was having fun.
oh, and it
And
was
that came
great. It
across.
was great to see John. To see him.
Yeah. And John sounded fantastic.
Yeah, he did. And he still does. Have you heard his new single?
Yes,
Steve has. I haven't yet.
Oh, it's
I'm,
testy.
I'm sad.
Yeah, it's even when he's pissed off, he's nice.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't really
Not a
work.
good thing.
But it has an interesting middle section that has some
I
interesting.
don't know that I made it that far. I think I've checked out a little bit and then scanned forward, and I get the gist of it, and it's just not a good. And somebody was cheering him on. Somebody was like, "Yeah, man." Like, what?
I thought it was okay.
I told Fred this just today. I think it was just today. I'm at our age, and especially the previous generation that are still making music. I think you should make your next song as if it's going to be your last. Because what if it is?
Right, rather
So
than
would
just
John
tossing off something like
John feel good about knowing if he never got to do another song? So I kind of think, we should really be careful with what we put out, and that's just my 2 cents.
I hear you.
That guy's my favorite singer, but that was somebody should have reined him in. Let's put it.
Yeah, I don't think. I think even if he wanted to share that feeling, he could have articulated it in a more mature way.
Yeah.
Because it just sounds kind of.
It's not a good marriage of sentiment with sound.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of catchy. I'll give him a knack.
Well, I couldn't forget it. I couldn't get it out of my head, I guess.
Right, for better or worse.
We talked about it. I had to tell people about it.
Yeah. His new album is pretty cool, actually. 1,000 Hands.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff he recorded in the early 90s, and even like Chris and Alan are on some of it. And like all kinds of other people. It's like the producer, it's like, I guess he had the tapes in his garage for decades. Yeah. And some guy about 5 years ago said, "You still got those tapes? Why don't you let me have them and I'll dub them down to digital."
I've been in his garage, by the way.
Really? So
yeah.
Is it possible that they could have been hiding in there someplace?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a garage full of old gear and stuff you've seen before, and road cases, and it's all crammed in there, and the studio is right next door.
So you guys had him guest on one of your albums. How did that come about?
We had a guy that was working as his promoter and doing a little work for Roger Dean and Yes, and he approached us about doing some promotion for us. In fact, I think the famous flame war on your website was begun by this guy.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it didn't. His promotional ideas didn't work in every venue. Let's put it
Was
that
this
way.
the guy that was prone to kind of
Oh
really
yeah,
pump it up, and it almost
yeah,
seemed like
that guy.
hyperbole, so it was kind
But
of hard to swallow?
sweet guy, absolutely wonderful guy. I had a good time with him, and we worked with him for about a year. And he's the one that hooked us up with Roger Dean, and he's the one that hooked us up with John. So I had to more or less go with him out to um, San Luis Obispo, and was invited to John's house, and which in I guess it was 2007, 2006, 7, something like that. And I'm like, yes, let's do this. So
Sure.
I went out and hung out all day with him, and he told me stories and made me tea, and we had tea and cookies and gossiped about the other guys in the band.
Okay.
So he was asking us questions like, well, what about Chris and how's he doing? And it's just amazing to, the whole afternoon was very surreal. He did not know what a big fan I was, so he knew I was a fan. So he listened to some stuff that we did and determined he would do some vocalizations. He wasn't going to sing any lyrics necessarily that I handed him. He wasn't going to write anything. But
Well, he
he
does some
added,
great things. Sometimes he'll just do these little choruses of did
yeah,
it did it
yeah,
things, and they're awesome.
yeah. And just to say that we got to do it, and then Fred and I ended up spending quite a bit of time working with him on some of his stuff that it just never saw the light of day. But we got to swap ideas back and forth for a while, and it's fun. We get messages and emails from him every now and then. I talked to him a few times, so it's not quite the world it was 20 years ago. I mean, everybody can meet their favorite rock stars now.
Yeah, it kind of takes the mystique away, doesn't it?
Yeah, but back then, for me, at least for that time.
And which album was that? Concordium? Is that the one he was on?
No, he was on.
He was on
Culture of Ascent.
Culture of Ascent, yeah.
Yeah. Carl Groves sang a lot on that, and Susie did, and we did our cover of South Side of the Sky, and he sang on that.
Oh, very nice. I think I remember hearing that back in the day.
Yeah.
And then what a lot of people don't know is that you have worked with the current Yes singer, John Davison, as well.
Just talked to him yesterday.
He was on the If album. I think that's the one.
He did.
He's on 3 albums.
He's on 3.5 albums, basically.
Oh, okay.
That's another single. And we were going to have him on this new 90s project that we're doing. But we talked yesterday. He's tied up there in the studio right now. So with Yes.
Oh, good. Well, so they're already. Well, I heard they've been kicking some ideas around. So
They're still kicking. Let's put it that way. I think they're back to the drawing board just a little bit. But and so I told him we'd catch him on the next album. But he's kind of got a invitation every now and then from us to get back in and do some stuff. And then he 2018, I guess, with Cruise to the Edge, he performed with us both shows. So we still talk.
yeah, he seems like a super awesome person.
He is.
Met him a few
He's friendly.
times at the meet and greets after the show and stuff.
Very nice guy. Yeah.
Cordial. And you guys were working with him before you even got the Yes gig, right?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was.
And did you ever say, "Hey, this guy kind of sounds like John Anderson. He'd probably be good in Yes"?
The deal was we had just done the thing with John Anderson, and we wanted to keep going that route, and I knew that he wouldn't sing our lyrics, and he really wasn't. I tried to entice him to get interested in us for a while just to see, and that's not where, I think his passions were in another direction. We were a full-blown prog band. I don't think that's what he was interested in.
No, he was so into doing world music and that kind of stuff.
So we were going to do a remix of some songs from Inconsolable Secret, and we wanted the John Anderson style singing, and I looked on YouTube and found John Davison in his band Roundabout, which I think was,
okay. So you found kind of looking for a Yes tribute, knowing they'd have a singer in the ballpark.
And we got in touch with him, and became friends really fast. And so he ended up doing the next 3 albums with us. And right in the middle of the 3rd album is when they tapped him to come sing for Yes. And we knew, I knew, because our album If with him was very popular. It sold really well and everybody heard it. Yes heard it. And I'm like, well, it's just a matter of time because they're going to grab him. So I knew things weren't going to work out with John Anderson.
And Benoit. Benoit was in the band right then.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
that's true, yeah.
I think Davison was a better fit than Benoit, although I think Benoit did admirably during
He
the
did
time
fine.
he was there. And I thought he sounded great on Fly From Here, even though it was obvious he was kind of recreating a demo that Trevor Horn had done. But I thought he did a great job on that. Did you ever hear the one From a Page, the one that was like shelved and only released like last year? It was an EP.
I've heard the one song. I haven't had a chance to actually get a copy
That's
of it
the
yet.
coolest thing on it is the single, I think.
Okay.
Although there's a much longer version on the album with lots of Moog solos and stuff. And it's, I thought that was really nice that Oliver Wakeman got to put something out that kind of showed his time with them, because he spent quite a bit of time with them and he did a great job, on that tour. He played his dad's stuff and Jeff's and Tony's fine. I thought he did a great job. So yeah, it's been interesting. But Benoit, I just think Davison does, I don't know, is a better fit. You could tell that he grew up loving the stuff. I think Benoit didn't. I think it was more like, hey, you sound like the guy from Yes. You should go join a Yes tribute band. Okay,
no,
yes, I will.
John Davison absolutely idolizes John Anderson.
Yeah, well, I think that's an important part of the job.
And he's got the personality. I mean, his personality is a good fit. And I mean, I'm not saying Benoit doesn't have a good personality. I imagine he's a great guy, but he doesn't really just have that sort of.
Well, yeah, he doesn't have that kind of mystical, spiritual, hippie kind of thing.
And John really does. I mean, that's not an act. He's the same kind of guy.
Right, so.
He's also a bass player.
He's a great bass player.
Yeah,
that's funny. That's another reason that he's more like Trevor Horn. He's an excellent bass player.
That's very good. Hey, did he ever play any bass on your records?
No. Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah, of course.
No, I did let one guy, it's a guy here in town, Terry Klaus, played a couple of, early on. I think that's the only guy that's ever guested on bass.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in Somnambulist.
Oh yeah, I remember.
It was kind of a 90s, pretty cool band Fred and I got to produce. Yeah.
Well, looks like it's about midnight, so we should probably wrap it up pretty soon. I was wondering if there's anything you guys want to talk to our guests about. Your pillow, maybe?
Yeah. If we're going to slip in anything else, we probably ought to just briefly talk about what we're actually doing right now. Get that plugged in.
I think I did, before you joined us, I did.
Okay.
I'll repeat it, though.
Go ahead and recap real quick.
It's called A Matter of Time, Volume 1. We tossed around several names, but that's the best thing we could come up with, A Matter of Time. And we're redoing some of our favorites from the 90s, Glass Hammer 90s albums, with an eye towards maybe hitting the next decade sometime later down the road. And as we begin to wrap that up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start really working towards a follow-up to Dreaming City. And it'll literally be a part 2 to that album. I'd like to have it out by end of spring. Something like that.
You guys are very prolific.
Glass Hammer is staying busy. We still enjoy it and are blessed that we get to do it.
Well, we're blessed to have your music to enjoy.
Yeah.
So
thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you. And let me tell folks a bit about what's coming up next. Next weekend on Saturday night, our usual 10 p.m. time spot, we're speaking with another amazing 90s progressive rock band, Echoland. So we'll be chatting with Chris and Ray, and Brett might drop in too. He's got a gig, and if I was Brett, I wouldn't hurry over and do this after a gig. I'd go home and relax. So don't hold your breath for him, but Chris and Ray will be here, and they've got a new album that's just about done. So hopefully maybe I can get a little information about that. And if you have yet to subscribe to the show, it's /Soul Night Live, and Soul stands for Story of a Life, because these are like little biographical looks at people's lives. So just look us up and subscribe. There's well over 40 episodes already on there, a who's who of prog rock and classic rock and stuff like that. And coming up a few weeks down the road, I'm chatting with the drummer from the Spin Doctors, Aaron Comas. You might remember his highly tuned piccolo snare cutting through the murk of early 90s MTV. Like the minute you heard those songs start, it's like, hey, this is something different. This guy's got some jazz chops. What's going on here? That's not a Simmons drum, you know. So yeah, we'll be chatting with him too. And other than that, the slate, the canvas is clean, but I'll find some more people to chat with. I'm also going to do a show all about the history of Yes with Henry Potts, who you might remember is the go-to guy on the internet when it comes to Yes information. So he's a really nice dude. So, all right, you guys, take care. Stay safe. Always wishing you the best. All right. Hope to see you in the flesh one of these days. You know, you guys are just 2 hours away, so it could happen.
It could happen.
You know, it can happen.
It can happen.
Yes.
It can happen to me eventually. All right, you guys, take care.
Good night.
All right, good night.